Talon's ship plummeted through the atmosphere, trailing smoke and debris. The young Orion scout gritted her teeth, fighting the controls as the hostile jungle planet loomed ever closer. Her mission to chart this unexplored world had gone horribly wrong when an asteroid field shredded her vessel's hull. As the ship struck the dense canopy, Talon braced for impact. Metal screeched and tore. Her head slammed against the console and darkness engulfed her. Hours later, Talon regained consciousness. She stumbled from the wreckage, disoriented and bleeding. The humid air pressed against her skin as she surveyed the alien landscape. Towering trees with phosphorescent leaves stretched skyward. Strange, unseen creatures chittered in the undergrowth. Survival instincts kicked in. Talon retrieved emergency supplies from the crash site and set out to find water and shelter. As she hacked through the dense foliage with her vibroblade, a bone-chilling roar echoed through the trees. Talon froze, her heart's racing. A massive, six-limbed predator burst from the jungle. Its maw gaped wide, razor-sharp teeth gleaming. Talon fired her blaster, but the energy bolts barely singed the beast's armored hide. She turned to flee, but her injured leg buckled beneath her. As the creature lunged, a figure erupted from the underbrush. A human male, his clothing tattered and skin weathered, brandished a makeshift spear. He plunged the weapon into the predator's eye, using his momentum to drive the point deep into its brain. The beast collapsed, twitching. Talon stared in disbelief. This human had saved her life. It defied everything she'd been taught about their species. Humans were supposed to be bloodthirsty savages, not selfless rescuers. The man approached, hands raised in a gesture of peace. "I'm Jesse Tucker," he said, his voice rough from disuse. "Are you all right?" Talon's shock gave way to suspicion. "Why did you help me? Aren't you going to eat me or something?" Jesse's eyebrows shot up. "Eat you? Is that what Orions think we do?" As Jesse tended to Talon's wounds, he explained his presence on the planet. He had been part of a human diplomatic mission, a last-ditch effort to prevent war between their species. But Orion extremists had attacked their ship, stranding Jesse here for months. Talon's mind reeled. A human diplomatic mission? It contradicted everything she knew. Yet as Jesse continued, describing the human government's discovery of an Orion invasion plot, she felt her certainty waver. "We came in peace," Jesse said, his eyes haunted. "We wanted to find a way to coexist. But your leaders—" He trailed off, shaking his head. Talon wanted to argue, to defend her people, but Jesse's actions spoke louder than any propaganda she'd been fed. This human had risked his life to save her. An enemy. As night fell, Jesse led Talon to his makeshift shelter. He shared his meager supplies and taught her which local plants were safe to eat. His ingenuity and survival skills impressed her, further challenging her preconceptions. "There's an abandoned alien outpost a few days' journey from here," Jesse said as they huddled around a small fire. "It might have a working communication device. If we can reach it, we might find a way off this rock." Talon nodded, her mind racing. She knew she should be wary, should view this human as an enemy, yet she couldn't deny the growing sense of trust and something else, something that both excited and terrified her. As they prepared to sleep, Talon watched Jesse check the perimeter one last time. His movements were efficient, his eyes alert. She realized that despite his kindness, he remained focused on survival and his mission to prevent war. Talon closed her eyes, conflicting emotions warring within her. She had crash-landed on this planet expecting to face its dangers alone. Instead, she found herself allied with a human who defied everything she thought she knew. As sleep claimed her, one thought lingered. In this hostile jungle, her greatest challenge might not be survival, but confronting her own prejudices and the growing attraction she felt toward Jesse Tucker. As dawn broke over the alien jungle, Jesse and Talon set out toward the abandoned outpost. The dense foliage impeded their progress, but Jesse's machete and Talon's vibroblade made short work of the obstacles. They moved in near silence, communicating through gestures and whispers when necessary. After 2 days of grueling travel, they crested a hill and caught their first glimpse of the outpost. The structure rose from the jungle floor like a monolithic tomb, its surface overgrown with vibrant alien flora. There it is, Jesse breathed, wiping sweat from his brow. Let's hope that comm device is still operational. Talon nodded, her eyes scanning the perimeter. No visible defenses, but stay alert. We don't know what's waiting for us inside. They approached cautiously, hugging the tree line for cover. Jesse produced a small device from his pack and held it up to the outpost's main entrance. After a moment, the door slid open with a hiss of stale air. Inside, emergency lighting flickered to life, illuminating a labyrinth of corridors. Jesse and Talon moved deeper into the facility, their footsteps echoing in the eerie silence. At each junction, they paused to consult the outpost's layout, which Jesse had managed to download to his device. The central control room should be 2 levels down, Jesse whispered, gesturing toward a nearby lift. As they descended, Talon marveled at Jesse's ingenuity. His ability to interface with and manipulate alien technology surpassed anything she'd expected from a human. When they reached the control room, he quickly located the main console and set to work. Cover the entrance, Jesse instructed as his fingers flew over the controls. This might take a while. Talon took up a defensive position, her blaster at the ready. Minutes ticked by, punctuated only by the soft beeps and whirs of the console. Suddenly, Jesse let out a triumphant, "Yes!" The main view screen flickered to life, displaying a dizzying array of data. "I've accessed the comm system. Now we just need to—" His words were cut short by a deafening alarm. Red warning lights began to flash throughout the facility. "What did you do?" Talon shouted over the noise. Jesse's face paled. "I triggered some kind of security protocol. The system's initiating a self-destruct sequence." They raced back to the lift, but it refused to respond. With no other choice, they sprinted for the emergency stairwell. As they climbed, the facility shuddered ominously around them. "Wait," Jesse called out, skidding to a halt on a landing. "Do you hear that?" A faint thumping sound emanated from behind a nearby door. Jesse pried it open, revealing a room filled with stasis pods. Most were empty, but 5 contained alien life forms. "We can't leave them," Jesse insisted, already moving to deactivate the pods. Talon grabbed his arm. "We don't have time. The whole place is about to blow." Jesse met her gaze, his eyes pleading. "I can't abandon them. Please help me." Something in his expression made Talon's tenacity waver. With a frustrated growl, she joined him in releasing the pod's occupants. The aliens stumbled out, disoriented but alive. Their skin was a pale lavender, with elongated limbs and large expressive eyes. One of them spoke, its voice a melodious trill. "They're Xarthak," Talon translated, her eyes wide. "I thought they were extinct." "Explanations later," Jesse urged, ushering the group toward the stairs. "We need to move." They half ran, half carried the weakened Xarthak up the remaining levels. The facility's tremors grew more violent with each passing second. They burst out of the main entrance just as the first explosions rocked the structure's foundation. The group sprinted for the tree line, the heat of the expanding fireball licking at their heels. They dove for cover as the outpost collapsed in on itself, sending a massive plume of debris into the sky. As the dust settled, Jesse did a quick head count. All 5 Xarthak had made it, along with himself and Talon. He allowed himself a moment of relief before the reality of their situation set in. "We need to move," he said, helping one of the Xarthak to its feet. "That explosion will have attracted attention." Talon nodded grimly. "My people will have detected it. They'll send scouts to investigate." They set a grueling pace through the jungle, the Xarthak struggling to keep up after centuries in stasis. Jesse and Talon took turns supporting the weakest members of the group, their own exhaustion forgotten in the face of this new responsibility. As night fell, they made camp in a small clearing. Jesse tended to the Xarthak while Talon kept watch. The aliens were regaining their strength, and one of them, who introduced himself as Zin, spoke passable Orion. "We thank you for our rescue," Zin said, his large eyes reflecting the starlight. "Our people have slumbered for many cycles, waiting for the galaxy to heal from the great calamity." Before Jesse could inquire further, Talon hissed a warning. "Someone's coming!" The group huddled in silence as a low rumble filled the air. An Orion shuttle passed overhead, its searchlights sweeping the canopy. "They're looking for me," Talon whispered, her face a mask of conflicting emotions. Jesse placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "We'll figure this out together. For now, we need to keep moving." As they prepared to leave, Jesse pulled Talon aside. "I have a plan, but you're not going to like it." He outlined his idea. He would create a diversion, leading the Orion search party away, while Talon escorted the Xanthor to safety. Talon's eyes widened in disbelief. "That's suicide," she hissed. "You can't possibly evade a trained Orion squad on your own." Jesse's lips quirked in a half-smile. "You'd be surprised what we humans are capable of. Besides, it's our best chance of getting the Xanthor to safety." Talon wanted to argue, but she recognized the logic in his plan. With a heavy heart, she agreed. As they parted ways, Talon found herself grappling with unfamiliar emotions. This human had repeatedly risked his life, not just for her, but for complete strangers. It challenged everything she'd been taught about their species. Jesse disappeared into the undergrowth, leaving Talon to lead the Xanthor through the alien jungle. As they walked, she found her thoughts continually drifting back to the human who had saved her life and was now risking everything to ensure their safety. Meanwhile, Jesse moved swiftly through the forest, intentionally leaving signs of his passage. He could hear the Orion search party in the distance, their voices carrying through the night air. As he led them further from Talon and the Xanthor, he overheard a conversation that chilled him to the bone. "Commander Krell, we've detected signs of recent activity," one of the Orion scouts reported. A gruff voice responded, "Excellent. Once we've secured the crash survivor, we can proceed with the invasion of Earth. The Nova Cannon is almost ready." Jesse's blood ran cold. The stakes had just gotten much higher. He had to find a way to warn Earth. But first, he needed to evade capture and reunite with Talon. As he formulated his next move, he heard a twig snap behind him. He spun around, coming face to face with an Orion soldier, weapon raised. In that moment, Jesse knew his actions in the next few seconds would determine not just his fate, but potentially the fate of two civilizations. Jesse's mind raced. In a split second, he dropped to the ground, narrowly avoiding the Orion soldier's stun blast. He rolled, snatching up a fallen branch, and swung it at the soldier's legs. The Orion stumbled, giving Jesse the opening he needed. He tackled the soldier, wrestling for control of the weapon. The scuffle was brief, but intense. Jesse managed to wrench the blaster free, stunning the Orion with his own weapon. Panting heavily, he dragged the unconscious soldier into the underbrush, concealing him from view. Jesse's heart pounded as he assessed his options. He needed to warn Talon and the Xanthor, but leading the Orions back to them would be disastrous. Instead, he headed deeper into the jungle, away from his companions, leaving a clear trail for the search party to follow. Meanwhile, Talon guided the Xanthor through the dense foliage, her senses on high alert. The aliens moved with surprising grace despite their weakened state. Zin, the most vocal of the group, spoke softly as they traveled. "Your human friend," he said. "He possesses great courage." Talon nodded, her expression conflicted. "He's not what I expected." As they pushed through a particularly thick section of vegetation, Talon's foot caught on something metallic. She knelt, brushing away layers of moss and dirt to reveal a hatch. "It's some kind of underground structure," she whispered, examining the alien markings. "Zin, can you read this?" The Xanthor's eyes widened. "It's one of our ancient outposts, a sanctuary." With effort, they managed to pry open the hatch. Inside, they found a small hangar housing a sleek spacecraft, its design unlike anything Talon had ever seen. "Our salvation," Zin breathed. Talon's mind reeled. This could be their ticket off the planet, but Jesse was still out there, risking his life to lead the Orions away. She made a decision. "We need to find Jesse," she announced. "He's risking everything for us. We can't leave without him." The Xanthor agreed, and they formulated a plan. Using the ship's advanced scanners, they located Jesse's position and the approaching Orion search party. Talon piloted the craft, flying low over the treetops to avoid detection. They found Jesse cornered at the edge of a cliff, Commander Krell and his squad closing in. Talon opened the ship's hatch, hovering precariously close to the cliff face. "Jesse," she shouted, "jump!" Without hesitation, Jesse sprinted toward the edge and leaped. For a heart-stopping moment, he hung suspended in the air before crashing onto the ship's open ramp. Talon pulled him inside as laser fire erupted around them. "Go, go, go!" Jesse yelled, scrambling to his feet. Talon gunned the engines, and the ship shot upward, breaking through the canopy. As they ascended, the vessel shuddered violently. "What's happening?" Talon called out, struggling with the controls. Jesse rushed to the co-pilot's seat, his hands flying over the unfamiliar console. "The atmospheric transition is overloading the propulsion system. We need to reroute power from non-essential systems." He worked feverishly, bypassing safety protocols and improvising solutions with a quick wit that left Talon in awe. The ship stabilized, piercing through the upper atmosphere and into the inky blackness of space. Their relief was short-lived. The ship's sensors blared a warning as an Orion battlecruiser appeared on their scanners, rapidly closing the distance. "It's Krell," Talon said, recognizing the ship's signature. "He must have contacted the fleet when we escaped." Jesse studied the tactical display, his mind racing. "The planet's rings," he said suddenly. "If we can reach them, we might be able to lose them in the debris field." Talon nodded, adjusting their course. The Xanthor watched in tense silence as she piloted the ship toward the swirling bands of ice and rock encircling the planet. As they entered the rings, chunks of debris pinged off the hull. Jesse worked to reinforce the shields, while Talon navigated the treacherous field. Behind them, the Orion cruiser fired, its beams shattering massive ice formations. "Hold on," Talon called out as she executed a series of daring maneuvers, weaving through the debris. Jesse and Talon worked in perfect sync, their hands brushing as they adjusted controls and rerouted power. For a brief moment, their eyes met, an electric current passing between them. But the gravity of their situation pushed the feeling aside. They emerged from the rings, the Orion cruiser no longer in pursuit. However, their small victory was overshadowed by the damage their ship had sustained. "We're losing power," Jesse reported, his voice grim. "We need to find somewhere to set down for repairs." Zinn pointed to a blinking light on the navigation console. "There," he said. "Haven Station, it's neutral territory." With no other options, they set a course for Haven. The station grew larger in their view screen, a sprawling structure of interconnected modules and docking bays. Talon hailed the station, requesting emergency docking clearance. As they touched down in a repair bay, Jesse and Talon shared a look of relief tinged with uncertainty. They had escaped immediate danger, but they both knew their ordeal was just the beginning. The station's security team met them at the airlock, led by a tall, willowy alien with iridescent skin. She introduced herself as Station Master Zara, her voice calm but authoritative. "I am granting you temporary asylum," she said, her large eyes taking in the ragtag group. "But I must warn you, we've detected both human and Orion fleets approaching the station. Your presence here puts us in a precarious position." Jesse stepped forward. "We need to send a message to Earth immediately. The Orions are planning an invasion." Zara hesitated, then nodded. "Follow me to the communication array. But be warned, any action that threatens Haven's neutrality will not be tolerated." As they hurried through the station's corridors, Jesse explained the situation to Zara. The Nova cannon, the impending attack on Earth, the Xanthor's offer to help disable it. Zara listened intently, her expression unreadable. They reached the communication center, a vast room filled with advanced technology. Jesse's fingers flew over the controls, composing a warning message to Earth. Just as he was about to transmit, alarms blared throughout the station. "The message has been intercepted," Zara announced, her voice tense. "The Orion fleet is demanding we turn you over. They're threatening to destroy Haven if we refuse." Jesse and Talon exchanged glances, the weight of their situation bearing down on them. Suddenly, Talon stepped forward, her face set with perseverance. "Let me contact them," she said. "I have an idea." Jesse watched in disbelief as Talon hailed the Orion fleet, claiming that Jesse was her prisoner. Her voice didn't waver as she spun a tale of capturing the human spy, buying them precious time. As Talon finished her transmission, Jesse pulled her aside. "Why did you do that?" he asked, his voice low. You could have turned me in, saved yourself. Talon met his gaze, her eyes filled with a mixture of emotions. Because you've shown me that everything I thought I knew about humans was wrong. We're in this together now. Their moment was interrupted by Zin, who approached with the other Zarthak. We may have a solution, he said. Our technology can disable the Nova cannon, but we need to get close to the Orion flagship. Jesse's mind raced, formulating a plan. We could use Talon's credentials, disguise a ship as Orion. As they began to hash out the details of their daring plan, a commotion erupted near the docking bay. Station security rushed to investigate, returning with news that chilled Jesse to the bone. A human special forces team has boarded the station, Zara reported. They're demanding to speak with you, Jesse. They believe you may be a traitor. Jesse's face paled. He recognized the name of the team's leader, Captain Marcus Steele. They had trained together years ago, before Jesse joined the diplomatic corps. The situation had become exponentially more complex. They were now caught between the approaching Orion fleet, the suspicious human special forces, and the threatened neutrality of Haven Station. As Jesse looked around at his unlikely allies, Talon, the Zarthak, and the wary but sympathetic Zara, he knew that the next few hours would determine not just their fate, but potentially the fate of Earth, the Orion civilization, and the fragile peace of the galaxy. With a deep breath, Jesse steeled himself for the challenges ahead. They had a Nova cannon to disable, 2 distrustful species to convince, and a war to prevent. And somewhere in the midst of it all, he and Talon would have to confront the growing connection between them, a bond that defied their people's hostility and might just hold the key to a peaceful future. All right, Jesse said, his voice steady despite the turmoil in his mind. Let's get to work. Work. Jesse's words hung in the air as the gravity of their situation settled over the group. Talon stepped forward, her eyes blazing with perseverance. We need to act fast. The Orions and humans are closing in, and we're running out of options. Jesse nodded, his mind racing. You're right. We need a plan that addresses both threats simultaneously. As they huddled together, Zin spoke up, his voice quiet but firm. Our ancient technology may hold the key. We can disable the Nova cannon, but we'll need to get close to the Orion flagship. A spark of inspiration lit up Jesse's face. Talon, your credentials? We could disguise a ship as Orion, get us close enough to make it work. Talon's eyes widened as she caught on to Jesse's idea. It's risky, but it might be our only shot. As they began to hash out the details of their daring plan, Station Master Zara approached, her iridescent skin shimmering with tension. A human special forces team has boarded the station, she reported. They're demanding to speak with you, Jesse. They believe you may be a traitor. Jesse's face paled as he recognized the name of the team's leader, Captain Marcus Steele. They had trained together years ago, before Jesse joined the diplomatic corps. This complicates things, Jesse muttered, running a hand through his hair. But it might also give us an opportunity. Talon raised an eyebrow. How so? If we can convince Captain Steele of the truth, we might gain valuable allies, Jesse explained. But first, we need to get aboard that Orion flagship. With a nod from Zara, they set their plan into motion. Using the station's advanced holographic technology, Jesse disguised himself as an Orion officer. Talon and 2 of the Zarthak posed as his prisoners, while the rest of the alien group remained hidden on Haven. As they made their way to the docking bay, Jesse's heart raced. He knew that the next few hours would determine the fate of not just their small group, but potentially the entire galaxy. They boarded a small, nondescript shuttle, its exterior shimmering as it took on the appearance of an Orion vessel. As Talon piloted them away from Haven, Jesse caught sight of another ship discreetly following them. Captain Steele and his team, no doubt. The journey to the Orion flagship was tense, filled with nervous glances and whispered strategies. As they approached, Talon's voice crackled over the comm system, using her credentials to request docking clearance. For a heart-stopping moment, Jesse thought they'd been discovered. Then the docking bay doors slid open, welcoming them into the belly of the beast. As they stepped off the shuttle, Jesse's mind whirled with the complexities of their mission. They needed to reach the Nova cannon's control room, disable the weapon, and somehow convince both humans and Orions of the truth, all while avoiding detection. Jesse led the way, his borrowed Orion uniform allowing them to move through the corridors with minimal suspicion. He marveled at the ship's architecture, so different from human designs. Where human ships were all function and efficiency, the Orion vessel seemed to pulse with an organic energy. As they navigated the labyrinthine hallways, Jesse's quick thinking and adaptability shone through. He used his knowledge of human technology to bypass Orion's security systems, showcasing the unique strengths of humanity that had allowed them to survive and thrive in the harsh realities of space. Talon watched him work, her admiration growing with each clever solution. There was something about the way his mind worked, always finding unconventional answers to impossible problems, that stirred something deep within her. Finally, they reached the Nova Cannon's control room. As Jesse worked to override the door's security, Talon kept watch, her every sense on high alert. "We're in," Jesse whispered as the door slid open with a soft hiss. They rushed inside, the two Xanthor immediately moving to the main control panel. Their hands flew over the alien technology, interfacing with it in ways Jesse couldn't begin to understand. Suddenly, alarms blared throughout the ship. Jesse's blood ran cold as Commander Krell's voice echoed through the corridors, ordering a ship-wide lockdown. "We've been made," Talon hissed, drawing her weapon. Jesse's mind raced, assessing their options. They were trapped in the control room, Orion security forces closing in from all sides. The Xanthor needed more time to disable the Nova Cannon. "We need to hold them off," Jesse said, his voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through his veins. "Buy the Xanthor as much time as we can." Talon nodded, her eyes meeting Jesse's in a moment of unspoken understanding. Together they turned to face the approaching threat, ready to defend their position with everything they had. As the first wave of Orion security forces rounded the corner, Jesse's combat training kicked in. He moved with fluid grace, using the ship's environment to their advantage. He rigged makeshift traps using loose panels and rerouted power conduits, creating obstacles and diversions that kept the Orions at bay. Talon fought beside him, her movements perfectly synchronized with his own. She found herself marveling at Jesse's resourcefulness, the way he seemed to turn every disadvantage into an opportunity. It was so different from the rigid, by-the-book approach of Orion combat doctrine. As they fought, Jesse caught glimpses of movement from an adjacent corridor. Captain Steele and his team, observing the situation. For a moment, their eyes met across the battlefield, and Jesse saw the dawning realization in Steele's gaze. They weren't traitors. They were fighting to save Earth. Suddenly, explosions rocked the far end of the corridor. Steele's team had joined the fray, creating a diversion that drew away some of the Orion forces. "Jesse!" Zinn called out from the control room. "We've done it. The Nova Cannon is disabled." Relief flooded through Jesse, but it was short-lived. The ship's systems, detecting the weapon's failure, initiated an automatic self-destruct sequence. "We need to get out of here," Talon shouted over the blaring alarms. Jesse's mind whirled, analyzing the situation in split seconds. "There's a way to override the self-destruct," he said, "but someone needs to stay behind in the control room." Before Talon could volunteer, Jesse made his decision. "I'll do it," he said, his voice firm. "Get the Xanthor to safety. I'll buy you as much time as I can." Their eyes met, a flurry of unspoken emotions passing between them. Talon opened her mouth to protest, but Jesse was already pushing her towards the escape route. "Go!" he shouted, turning back to the control panel. As Talon reluctantly fled with the Xanthor, she encountered Captain Steele's team in the corridor. Recognizing the urgency of the situation, they agreed to work together, forming an unlikely alliance in the face of imminent destruction. Meanwhile, Jesse worked feverishly at the control panel, his fingers flying over the alien interface. He managed to extend the countdown, but total override seemed impossible. As the ship began to break apart around him, he realized his time was running out. Just as he was about to accept his fate, the door burst open. Talon stood there, flanked by Captain Steele and his team. "Did you really think we'd leave you behind?" Talon said, a hint of a smile on her face despite the chaos around them. Steele stepped forward, his expression a mix of respect and urgency. "I've seen enough to know you're no traitor, Crawford. Now let's get the hell out of here. Together, they fought their way through the disintegrating ship, dodging falling debris and battling the remaining Orion forces. They reached the hangar bay, commandeering an Orion shuttle in a hail of laser fire. As they blasted away from the flagship, the Nova cannon exploded in a brilliant flash of light. The shockwave rocked their small craft, damaging several nearby Orion ships, but leaving the human fleet unscathed. In the aftermath of the explosion, both the Orion and human fleets hung in disarray, uncertain of how to proceed. As their shuttle approached Haven Station, Jesse knew that while they had averted immediate disaster, the broader conflict remained undedication. He looked at Talon, seated beside him in the co-pilot's chair. Their eyes met, and in that moment, Jesse realized that their shared ordeal had forged a bond between them that transcended their species' hostilities. As Haven Station grew larger in their view screen, Jesse took a deep breath. They had neutralized the immediate threat, but the real challenge lay ahead, bringing lasting peace between their peoples and reshaping the future of galactic relations. The shuttle docked with a gentle thud, and as the airlock hissed open, Jesse steeled himself for what was to come. Whatever challenges awaited them, he knew that together they stood a chance of overcoming them. As the shuttle glided towards Haven Station, Jesse's comm unit crackled to life. Station Master Zara's holographic image flickered into view, her expression taut with concern. "We have a situation," she said, her voice tight. "Both human and Orion fleets have entered our vicinity. They're demanding explanations and threatening military action." Jesse's stomach dropped. He exchanged a glance with Talon, seeing his own worry mirrored in her eyes. "How bad is it?" he asked. "We're on the brink of a three-way conflict," Zara replied. "Haven's defensive forces are on high alert, but we can't hold off both fleets if they decide to attack." As the shuttle docked with a soft thud, Jesse's mind raced. They needed a solution, and fast. As they disembarked, he turned to the group. "I have an idea," he said. "We need to address both fleets simultaneously. Station Master, does Haven have holographic technology capable of projecting to multiple locations?" Zara nodded. "We do, but our energy reserves are limited. You'd have a short window to make your case." "It'll have to be enough," Jesse said. He turned to Captain Steele. "Can you and your team help secure the station's defenses? We need to be prepared for anything." Steele nodded grimly. "Consider it done." As Steele's team moved out, Jesse and Talon followed Zara to Haven's command center. The room hummed with activity, holograms flickering with real-time data on the encroaching fleets. "Are you sure about this?" Talon asked, her voice low. Jesse met her gaze. "It's our best shot at preventing all-out war." Technicians swarmed around them, calibrating the holographic projectors. Jesse felt the weight of countless lives on his shoulders as he stepped onto the projection platform. Talon took her place beside him, her presence a steadying force. "Broadcast commencing in 3, 2, 1, a technician called out. Suddenly, Jesse and Talon found themselves virtually standing on the bridges of both the human and Orion flagships. Startled faces turned toward them, hands instinctively reaching for weapons before realizing the intruders were merely holograms. Jesse took a deep breath and began to speak. "Leaders of Earth and Orion, I am Jesse Crawford, and this is Talon of the Orion fleet. We come to you with urgent truths that affect the future of both our peoples." He launched into a concise explanation of recent events, the plot to use the Nova cannon, the involvement of Orion Extremists, and the crucial role played by the Zarthak in averting catastrophe. Talon stepped forward, her voice steady. "I can confirm everything Jesse has said. I was once part of the Extremist faction, but I've seen the error of our ways. Our perception of humans has been deeply flawed." As they spoke, Jesse noticed a flicker in their holographic projection. A technician's voice came through his earpiece. "We're under cyber attack. Someone's trying to disrupt the transmission." Jesse's mind shifted into high gear. Without breaking his speech, he moved to a nearby console, fingers flying over the controls. He rerouted power, established new firewalls, all while continuing to address the fleets. "The threat we face isn't from each other," he said, his voice never wavering despite the sweat beading on his brow. "It's from those who would see us destroy one another for their own gain." His multitasking seemed to impress the watching officers. He saw raised eyebrows and heard murmurs of admiration from both human and Orion crews. Suddenly, the holographic projector flickered, and 3 ethereal figures appeared beside Jesse and Talon. The Xarthak had joined the transmission. "We are the Xarthak," Zin's voice resonated across both bridges. "We offer our services as neutral mediators in this conflict. Let us help you find a path to peace." The appearance of the ancient race sent a ripple of awe through both fleets. Jesse saw the human admiral lean in, whispering urgently to his officers. On the Orion side, heated debates broke out among the command staff. "We propose an immediate summit," Jesse said, seizing the moment. "Here on Haven Station, let us meet face to face and work towards a lasting peace." He watched as the human fleet began to stand down, weapons powering off and ships backing away from their aggressive stance. Captain Steele's endorsement, transmitted from Haven, seemed to carry significant weight. The Orion response was more fragmented. Some ships followed suit, powering down weapons, while others maintained battle readiness. Jesse could see the division playing out on the bridge of the Orion flagship. As the transmission ended, Jesse and Talon found themselves back in Haven's command center. The room erupted into a flurry of activity as preparations for the summit began. "Incoming message from the Orion fleet," a technician called out. "A faction led by Lieutenant Vex has broken away. They're vowing to continue the fight." Before Jesse could respond, alarms blared throughout the station. Zara's voice came over the intercom. "We're under attack. The extremist Orion faction is targeting our life support systems." Jesse turned to Talon, his mind already formulating a plan. "We need to get to the defense control room. I have an idea." They raced through the corridors, joined by Captain Steele and his team. As they ran, Jesse outlined his plan. "We can repurpose Haven's defensive systems," he explained. "Create a localized energy field that will disable their ships without destroying them." In the control room, Jesse's fingers danced across the alien interface, melding human ingenuity with Orion technology. Talon watched in amazement as he worked, his ability to adapt and innovate unlike anything she'd seen before. "Now!" Jesse shouted, slamming his hand down on the activation panel. Outside, a shimmering field of energy expanded from Haven, enveloping the attacking Orion ships. Their systems flickered and died, leaving them powerless but intact. As the immediate threat subsided, Jesse turned to face the others. The room was filled with a mix of human, Orion, and Haven personnel, all looking to him with a newfound respect. "Well done," Captain Steele said, clapping Jesse on the shoulder. "You may have just saved us all." Zara's voice came over the intercom. "The first delegates are arriving. The summit is about to begin." Jesse and Talon shared a look. They had averted disaster, but the real challenge lay ahead. As they made their way to the conference room, Jesse felt the weight of history on his shoulders. The future of human-Orion relations hung in the balance, and he knew that every word, every action in the coming hours would be crucial. The doors to the conference room slid open, revealing a tense gathering of human and Orion leaders. All eyes turned to Jesse and Talon as they entered. The air crackled with potential, for peace or for further conflict. The summit was about to begin, and with it, a new chapter in galactic history. Relations. The summit was about to begin, and with it, a new chapter in galactic history. Jesse and Talon entered the conference room, the doors hissing shut behind them. The circular chamber was filled with an eclectic mix of human and Orion delegates, their vastly different physiologies a stark reminder of the gulf between their species. Tension crackled in the air like static electricity. At the center of the room, the ethereal forms of the Xarthak hovered, their presence lending an air of ancient wisdom to the proceedings. Zin's multifaceted eyes swept across the assembly, reflecting the myriad emotions on display. "Let us begin," Zin's resonant voice filled the chamber. "We stand at a crossroads of history. The choices made here today will echo through generations to come." As the negotiations commenced, Jesse found himself thrust into the role of intermediary. His unique experiences allowed him to bridge the cultural divide, explaining human concepts to the Orions and vice versa. The Orion concept of honor debt isn't about subservience, Jesse clarified to a frowning human admiral. It's more akin to our idea of paying it forward. They believe in a cosmic balance of favors. Hours passed in a flurry of debate, proposal, and counter-proposal. The Xarthak struggled to maintain order as tempers flared and old grievances resurfaced. During a particularly heated exchange, Jesse noticed Talon's eyes narrow, her attention fixed on a small object beneath the conference table. As the mediators called for a recess, Jesse ducked under the table, retrieving what appeared to be a sophisticated listening device. He caught Talon's eye, giving a slight nod towards the exit. In the corridor outside, Jesse examined the device more closely. "This is human tech," he murmured, brow furrowed, "but more advanced than anything I've seen before." "Someone's trying to sabotage the talks," Talon said, her voice low and urgent. Jesse's mind raced. "We need to alert Captain Steele without causing a panic. If word of this gets out, it could derail everything we've accomplished." As Jesse briefed Steele on the situation, Talon slipped away, tapping into her network of Orion contacts. When she returned, her expression was grim. "Jesse, we have another problem," she said. "Lieutenant Vex's faction has acquired experimental cloaking technology. They're planning a stealth attack on Earth while we're all distracted here." Jesse's stomach dropped. They were facing threats from both sides now, walking a tightrope between human and Orion extremists. One wrong move could plunge both species back into war. "We need to neutralize both threats without disrupting the summit," Jesse said, his mind already formulating a plan. "Haven's sensor array might be able to detect the cloaked ships if we boost its power and integrate some Xarthak tech." Talon nodded, quickly grasping the idea. "But Haven's systems are damaged. Rerouting that much power would be incredibly dangerous." "I'll do it," Jesse said, his mind focused. "Not alone, you won't," Talon countered, her eyes flashing with a mix of concern and grit. Together, they made their way to Haven's maintenance tunnels, a maze of narrow passageways filled with humming conduits and flickering control panels. The damage from the recent attacks was evident in the sparking wires and groaning metal around them. Jesse moved with purpose, his fingers dancing across alien interfaces as he rerouted power and modified systems. Talon watched in amazement, her respect for his adaptability growing with each passing moment. "Watch out!" Talon cried, yanking Jesse back just as a surge of energy arced across their path. The near miss left Jesse's hair standing on end, his heart pounding. "Thanks," he gasped. "I owe you one." Talon's mandibles clicked in what Jesse had come to recognize as an Orion smile. "I'll add it to your honor debt," she quipped. As they worked, Jesse's comm unit crackled to life. Captain Steele's voice came through, punctuated by the sound of weapons fire. "Crawford, we've engaged the human extremists. Their leader, Gabriel Hawk, is in custody, but he managed to activate some kind of signal before we got to him." Jesse's blood ran cold. "Understood, Captain. We're almost done here. Stand by for sensor activation." With a final adjustment, Jesse activated the modified sensor array. The station hummed with power, lights flickering as energy was diverted to the enhanced systems. On the main bridge, Station Master Zara's eyes widened as new data flooded her screens. "We've got them," she announced. "Cloaked Orion vessels approaching on Vector 227. Zara's voice rang out across all channels. "Attention, Orion vessels. Your cloaking technology has been compromised. Power down your weapons and prepare to be boarded or face the consequences." For a tense moment, nothing happened. Then suddenly, the space around Haven lit up with weapons fire as Vex's ships decloaked and launched a desperate attack. Jesse sprinted to the bridge, Talon hot on his heels. His eyes darted across the tactical displays, analyzing the battle unfolding before them. "There!" he shouted, pointing to a weakness in the Orion formation. "If we target that junction, we can disrupt their entire attack pattern." The information was relayed to both human and Orion fleets. In a historic first, ships from both species moved in concert, their combined firepower easily overwhelming Vex's forces. As the last of the extremist ships were disabled, a collective cheer went up from the bridge crew. But the celebration was short-lived. Alarms blared as a massive ship dropped out of hyperspace, its hull dripping with weaponry. "Humanity's Fist," someone whispered, the name sending a chill through the room. The Extremist flagship loomed over Haven, its powerful energy weapon charging, ready to obliterate the station and, with it, any hope for peace. Jesse's mind raced. The modified sensor array might be able to detect a weakness in the ship's defenses, but pushing it any further could overload Haven's already strained systems. The station, along with everyone on it, could be destroyed. Time seemed to slow as Jesse weighed his options. The fate of two species hung in the balance, their future resting on his decision. He looked at Talon, seeing his own fears and hopes reflected in her alien eyes. Jesse took a deep breath, his hand hovering over the sensor controls. Whatever he decided, there would be no going back. The next few moments would determine the course of galactic history. History. Jesse's hand hovered over the sensor controls, his mind racing through calculations and possibilities. The fate of two species hung in the balance, their future resting on his decision. He looked at Talon, seeing his own fears and hopes reflected in her alien eyes. With a deep breath, Jesse made his choice. He slammed his hand down on the controls, pushing Haven's modified sensor array to its absolute limits. The station groaned in protest, lights flickering and alarms blaring as the immense power surge coursed through its systems. Come on, Jesse muttered, his eyes fixed on the readout. Sweat beaded on his forehead as he watched the scan progress, praying it would complete before Haven's overtaxed systems gave out. Just as the power fluctuations reached a critical level, the sensor array pinged. Jesse's eyes widened as he processed the data. "There!" he shouted, pointing to a specific section of the Humanity's Fist display. "Their shield generator has a vulnerability in the aft section. If we hit it with a concentrated burst, we can punch through their defenses." Captain Steele's voice crackled over the comm. "Understood, Crawford. We're forming a joint strike force now." On the main view screen, Jesse watched as human and Orion ships moved into formation, their combined firepower focusing on the weak point he'd identified. The sight of the two fleets working in unison sent a surge of hope through him. But that hope was short-lived as Haven's power grid began to fail. Entire sections of the station went dark, and the life support systems started to falter. "Jesse, we need to move," Talon said urgently, grabbing his arm. "If we don't stabilize the power grid, everyone on this station is going to die." They raced through Haven's corridors, the emergency lighting casting eerie shadows. As they ran, Jesse outlined his plan. "We need to manually reroute power from non-essential systems to maintain life support and defenses. It's going to be dangerous. We'll be dealing with live circuits and unstable power flows." Talon nodded grimly. "I've got your back." They reached the first junction box, and Jesse immediately got to work. His fingers flew over the controls, bypassing safety protocols and redirecting power flows. Beside him, Talon acted as his second pair of hands, following his instructions with precision. As they moved from section to section, the danger increased. Electrical fires broke out, forcing them to navigate through smoke-filled corridors. In one area, a power surge caused a small explosion, showering them with sparks and debris. Despite the chaos, Jesse found himself hyper-aware of Talon's presence. They moved in perfect sync, anticipating each other's needs without a word. In the confined spaces of the maintenance tunnels, they were often pressed close together, and Jesse could feel the heat radiating from her alien body. During a brief lull as they waited for a power coupling to stabilize, Jesse turned to Talon. Their eyes met, and for a moment the universe seemed to narrow to just the two of them. The air crackled with unspoken tension. Talon reached out, her hand brushing Jesse's cheek. "Jesse, Her words were cut off by a violent tremor that shook the station. Alarms blared anew, and Zara's voice came over the intercom, strained and urgent. "Critical failure in Sector 7. We're losing life support." The moment broken, Jesse and Talon sprinted towards the new crisis. Outside Haven, the battle raged on. Captain Steele, leading the boarding party on Humanity's Fist, fought his way through waves of extremist soldiers. His years of special forces training were on full display as he moved with lethal efficiency, neutralizing threats with precision and speed. Steele finally reached the bridge, coming face to face with the Extremist leader. The man sneered, drawing a wicked-looking combat knife. "You're too late, Steel. Even if you take this ship, the damage is done. The peace talks are finished." Steele's eyes narrowed. "You're wrong. What's happening out there? That's the future. Humans and Orions fighting side by side. Your hate is obsolete." The two men clashed in a brutal hand-to-hand fight. Steele's superior training gave him the edge, but the Extremist leader fought with the desperate fury of a cornered animal. Back on Haven, Jesse and Talon arrived in the Sector 7 to find the Xarthak already there. The ethereal beings were using their unique abilities to stabilize the failing systems, their bodies glowing with an intense light. But the effort was taking its toll. As Jesse watched, Xanthor, the eldest of the Xarthak, collapsed to the ground, his light flickering weakly. "We need to do something," Talon said, her voice tight with concern. "They can't keep this up much longer." Jesse nodded, his mind racing. He turned to Station Master Zara, who had just arrived on the scene. "Zara, I have an idea, but it's risky. We can use the Xarthak's ship to jumpstart Haven's main reactor. It might be our only chance to restore full power." Zara's eyes widened. "That's incredibly dangerous. The power surge could overload our systems completely." "It's that or watch Haven die slowly," Jesse countered. "We need to try." Zara hesitated for a moment, then nodded. "Do it. I'll divert power from our defensive systems to boost life support. It'll leave us vulnerable, but it might buy you the time you need." As Jesse prepared to leave, Talon grabbed his arm. "I'm coming with you." Jesse shook his head. "I need you here. Someone has to coordinate with the Xarthak and keep things running while I'm out there." Before Talon could protest, Jesse pulled her close and pressed his forehead to hers, an intimate gesture he'd seen Orions use. "Be careful," he whispered. Talon's mandibles clicked softly. "You too." As Jesse raced towards the hangar bay, Talon turned her attention back to the crisis at hand. But a flicker of movement caught her eye, a shadow where there shouldn't be one. Her eyes narrowed as she recognized the figure slipping away down a side corridor. Lieutenant Vex. Without hesitation, Talon took off in pursuit. She knew Vex was likely heading for the summit delegates, seeking to reignite the conflict. She couldn't let that happen. Jesse, meanwhile, had reached the hangar bay. He climbed into a small maintenance craft, his heart pounding as he initiated the launch sequence. As the bay doors opened, he got his first clear view of the battle raging outside. The space around Haven was a chaos of weapons fire and debris. Jesse gritted his teeth and pushed the small craft to its limits, weaving through the battlefield towards the Xarthak's ship. On the bridge of humanity's fist, Captain Steele finally gained the upper hand in his fight with the Extremist leader. With a final, decisive move, he disarmed his opponent and pinned him to the ground. But even as Steele secured his prisoner, a new alarm began to sound. The Extremist leader grinned through bloodied teeth. "Too late, Steele. I've activated the self-destruct. This ship is going to take your precious station with it when it blows." Steele's blood ran cold. He turned to his team, barking orders. "Secure the prisoner. I need to get to the engine room and disable that self-destruct." As Steele raced against time, Jesse reached the Xarthak ship. His hands flew over the controls as he maneuvered the maintenance craft into position, ready to create the power link that could save Haven. Talon, meanwhile, had cornered Vex in a damaged section of the station. The two Orions faced each other, tension crackling between them. "It's over, Vex," Talon said, her voice hard, "and stand down." Vex snarled, his hand moving to his weapon. "Never. I'll die before I let this abomination of a peace succeed." As Jesse began the delicate process of connecting the Xarthak ship to Haven's reactor, as Talon prepared to confront Vex, and as Captain Steele raced to disable the flagship's self-destruct, the fate of Haven, the peace talks, and the future of human-Orion relations hung in the balance. The next few moments would determine everything. Jesse's hands moved with practiced precision as he connected the final coupling between the Xarthak ship and Haven's reactor. He held his breath, waiting for the telltale hum of power transfer. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, with a low whine that quickly built to a roar, energy surged through the connection. Haven's systems flickered to life, screens lighting up and emergency klaxons falling silent. Jesse allowed himself a brief smile before the maintenance craft lurched violently. The power surge was causing unexpected fluctuations throughout the station. "Zara, what's the situation?" Jesse called over the comm as he fought to keep the small craft steady. "Power levels are stabilizing, but we're seeing cascading failures in multiple systems." Zara's voice crackled back. "Gravity plating is malfunctioning in sections 3 through 7, and we've got decompression warnings in the outer rings." Jesse gritted his teeth. "I'm on my way back. Have you heard from Talon?" There was a pause before Zara responded, her voice tight with concern. "Negative. Last communication indicated she was in pursuit of Lieutenant Vex." Jesse's heart raced as he maneuvered the maintenance craft back towards Haven's hangar bay. As soon as he was through the airlock, he sprinted towards the damaged sections of the station, his mind racing with possibilities. Meanwhile, in a corridor near the outer hull, Talon ducked as Vex's fist whistled past her head. She countered with a swift kick to his midsection, driving him back against the wall. Vex snarled, his eyes wild with hatred. "You're a traitor to your own kind," he spat, lunging forward again. Talon sidestepped, using Vex's momentum against him. "No, Vex, I'm fighting for our future. All of our futures." The two Orions grappled, their fight taking them through corridors filled with sparking conduits and flickering lights. Suddenly, the gravity plating beneath them failed. They were thrown upwards, scrambling for purchase in the zero-G environment. Talon's military training kicked in. She used the walls to propel herself, gaining the upper hand as Vex flailed in the weightless space. But her advantage was short-lived. An emergency bulkhead slammed shut, cutting off their path. Warning lights flashed red, indicating imminent decompression. Aboard the human Extremist flagship, Captain Steele raced through the corridors, his team providing cover fire against the remaining Extremist crew. He skidded to a halt in front of the engine room door, his fingers flying over the keypad. "Access denied," the computer intoned. Steele cursed under his breath. "Jenkins, I need a bypass, now." As his tech specialist worked to override the door, Steele heard the ominous countdown of the self-destruct sequence echoing through the ship's speakers. Time was running out. Back on Haven, the summit delegates had transformed the main conference room into a makeshift command center. Humans and Orions worked side by side, coordinating efforts to stabilize the station and manage the ongoing battle outside. Ambassador Chen, her usually immaculate suit now rumpled and stained, leaned over a tactical display. "If we reconfigure our shield harmonics to match the Orion cruisers, we can create a unified defensive perimeter around Haven." High Commander Kavath nodded, his mandibles clicking in agreement. "An excellent suggestion. I'll relay the information to our fleet." As the delegates worked, the Zarthak moved among them, their ethereal forms pulsing with energy. Xanthor, still weakened but determined, interfaced directly with Haven's computer systems. His consciousness flowed through the station's circuitry, making minute adjustments to power flow and system protocols. The other Zarthak followed suit, their combined efforts creating a complex web of energy that helped stabilize Haven's fluctuating systems. As they worked, the delegates watched in awe, gaining new insight into the capabilities of these mysterious beings. Jesse reached the damaged section where Talon's last communication had originated. He found himself in a maintenance tunnel, the artificial gravity shifting unpredictably. One moment he was running normally, the next he was floating, then suddenly he was pulled sideways or upside down. "Talon!" he called out, fighting against the disorienting effects. "Talon, where are you?" A muffled sound caught his attention. Jesse propelled himself towards it, using the erratic gravity to his advantage. He rounded a corner to find Talon and Vex trapped in a section on the verge of decompression, still locked in combat. Without hesitation, Jesse launched himself into the fray. He collided with Vex, breaking the Orion's hold on Talon. The three of them tumbled in the weightless environment, a tangle of limbs and snarling faces. "The hull's compromised," Talon shouted over the sound of straining metal. "We need to get out of here." Jesse nodded, but Vex wasn't done fighting. The Extremist Orion pulled a hidden blade, slashing wildly at Jesse and Talon. They dodged as best they could in the confined space, but Vex managed to slice a deep gash in Jesse's arm. Talon reacted instantly. She grabbed Vex's wrist, twisting until he dropped the knife. In the same fluid motion, she used her other hand to deliver a precise strike to a nerve cluster at the base of Vex's skull. The extremist went limp, unconscious. "We can't leave him," Jesse said, already moving to secure Vex's unconscious form. Talon nodded grimly. "I know. Help me with the emergency hatch." Together they maneuvered towards the sealed hatch that separated them from the safer interior of the station. But as they reached it, a horrific screeching filled the air. The compromised hull was beginning to give way. On the Extremist flagship, Captain Steele finally gained access to the engine room. He rushed to the main control panel, his eyes scanning the complex array of switches and readouts. "Sir, we've got incoming," one of his team members shouted. "Extremist reinforcements." Steele's mind raced. He didn't have time to figure out the proper shutdown sequence. In a split-second decision, he pulled out his combat knife and plunged it into the control panel. Sparks flew as the knife short-circuited the system. The self-destruct countdown faltered and stopped, but the ship's alarms immediately began blaring. Steele had halted the immediate threat, but at a cost. "We've got cascading system failures across the ship," his tech specialist reported, her voice tense. "Engines are offline, life support is failing, and we're drifting towards Haven." Steele's mind focused. They'd avoided one disaster only to face another. "Get me a line to Haven Control," he ordered. "We need to coordinate to prevent a collision." As crises unfolded across multiple fronts, the combined human-Orion fleet engaged in the final push against the remaining extremist forces. Guided by the coordinated efforts from Haven's command center, the Allied ships moved with unprecedented synchronization. Human destroyers provided cover fire, while Orion cruisers executed precision strikes. Fighter squadrons from both species flew in mixed formations, their different technologies and tactics blending into a formidable force. Admiral Zhao, commanding the human flagship, allowed himself a small smile as he watched the battle unfold. "Send word to all ships," he ordered. "Push forward. Victory is within our grasp." Back in the decompressing section of Haven, Jesse and Talon worked frantically to open the emergency hatch, while keeping hold of the unconscious Vex. The hull groaned ominously, small fissures appearing in the metal. "It's jammed!" Talon shouted, her muscles straining as she pulled at the hatch release. Jesse looked around desperately, his mind racing. His eyes fell on a nearby panel. "The emergency thrusters," he said suddenly. "If we can ignite them, the force might push the hatch open." Talon nodded, understanding immediately. She braced herself against the wall, holding onto Vex, while Jesse made his way to the panel. He pried it open, revealing a tangle of wires and circuitry. Come on," Jesse muttered as he worked to bypass the safety protocols. The hull creaked and buckled, the sound of escaping air growing louder. Just as a large crack appeared in the viewport, Jesse connected the final wire. The emergency thrusters roared to life, the sudden force slamming them all against the hatch. For a heart-stopping moment, nothing happened. Then, with a screech of protesting metal, the hatch burst open. The three were propelled into the relative safety of the inner corridor, the emergency bulkhead slamming shut behind them just as the compromised section decompressed fully. They tumbled in the fluctuating gravity, battered and breathless, but alive. As Jesse, Talon, and their captive Vex caught their breath, as Captain Steele struggled to regain control of the drifting flagship, as the Allied fleet entered the final phase of the space battle, and as Haven's systems teetered between restoration and failure, the fate of two species hung in the balance. The next moments would be critical, not just for those involved, but for the future of human-Orion relations and the stability of the galaxy itself. Jesse, Talon, and the unconscious Vex had barely caught their breath when a violent tremor shook the corridor. The artificial gravity flickered, sending them floating for a moment before slamming them back to the floor. "We need to move," Talon said, hefting Vex over her shoulder. "This section isn't stable." Jesse nodded, wincing as he put weight on his injured arm. "Engineering deck. We can assess the damage from there." They made their way through the chaotic maze of Haven's corridors, dodging falling debris and sparking conduits. The station's emergency lighting cast an eerie red glow, punctuated by the flashes of malfunctioning systems. As they rounded a corner, they encountered a group of panicked delegates trapped behind a partially collapsed bulkhead. Jesse immediately sprang into action, his engineering instincts taking over. "Talon, help me with this," he called, bracing himself against the warped metal. Together, they managed to create an opening large enough for the delegates to squeeze through. "Thank you," gasped a relieved Cerulean diplomat, her antenna quivering with fear. "Head for the central hub," Talon instructed, pointing down the corridor. "It should be more stable there." As the delegates hurried away, Jesse and Talon pressed on, their progress hampered by the increasingly unstable gravity. One moment they were running normally, the next they were floating helplessly, and then suddenly they were crawling against crushing force. "There!" Jesse pointed to an emergency airlock ahead. "If we can get through, we can seal off this section." They staggered towards the airlock, fighting against the shifting gravity. Jesse's heart sank as he saw the damaged control panel, its circuits exposed and sparking. "Stand back," he told Talon, pulling a multi-tool from his belt. With practiced movements, he began to bypass the airlock's safety protocols, rerouting power from auxiliary systems. "How much longer?" Talon asked, her eyes darting to the groaning bulkheads around them. "Almost got it," Jesse exclaimed as the airlock hissed open. They tumbled inside, dragging Vex with them. Jesse's fingers flew over the internal controls, sealing the airlock just as a horrific screech of tearing metal echoed behind them. They watched through the small viewport as the section they'd just escaped decompressed violently. "That was too close," Talon murmured, her usual stoic demeanor shaken. Jesse nodded grimly. "And we're not out of danger yet. Come on, we need to get to engineering." Meanwhile, aboard the destabilized human Extremist flagship, Captain Steele barked orders as his team scrambled to prevent a collision with Haven. The bridge was a cacophony of blaring alarms and shouted status reports. "Reroute all available power to the maneuvering thrusters," Steele commanded, his eyes fixed on the tactical display showing their trajectory. "Sir, life support is failing on decks 3 through 7, reported his second-in-command. Steele's mind raced, weighing options. Initiate emergency protocols, seal off those decks, and divert their power to propulsion. As his crew carried out his orders, Steele opened a channel to Haven Control. "This is Captain Steele. We've averted self-destruct, but we're on a collision course, requesting immediate assistance with trajectory calculations." The response came quickly, a mix of human and Orion voices coordinating efforts. Steele allowed himself a moment of pride at the seamless cooperation before focusing on the task at hand. "Jenkins," he called to his tech specialist, "work with Haven Control. I want options for a controlled descent into a stable orbit." On Haven, the Zarthak continued their heroic efforts to stabilize the station's systems. Xanthor, his ethereal form pulsing with strain, had fully merged his consciousness with Haven's main computer core. The other Zarthak surrounded him, their bodies forming a glowing network of energy that supported their elder's incredible feat. Through this deep connection, Xanthor gained unprecedented control over Haven's myriad systems. He rerouted power, sealed breaches, and coordinated repair bots within human speed and efficiency. But the effort was taking its toll. Xanthor's form flickered dangerously, threatening to dissipate entirely. The space battle outside Haven reached its climax as the combined human-Orion fleet unleashed a final, coordinated assault on the remaining Extremist forces. Human destroyers provided covering fire, their adaptive shield frequencies constantly shifting to absorb enemy attacks. Orion cruisers executed precision strikes, their advanced targeting systems finding weaknesses in the Extremist defenses. Fighter squadrons from both species flew in mixed formations, their different technologies complementing each other perfectly. Human pilots improvised daring maneuvers, while their Orion wingmen provided pinpoint accuracy in their attacks. From Haven's Joint Control Center, Admiral Zhao and High Commander Kavoth directed the battle with a shared purpose that would have been unthinkable mere days ago. "Concentrate fire on Sector Gamma 9, Kavoth ordered, his mandibles clicking in satisfaction as a group of Extremist frigates fell to the combined assault. Zhao nodded in agreement. "All ships, push forward. Victory is within our grasp." As the space battle reached its conclusion, a new crisis emerged on Haven. The station shuddered violently, and the artificial gravity went haywire. In the diplomatic quarters, delegates found themselves suddenly floating, while in other sections, crew members were pinned to the floor by crushing force. Jesse and Talon, having finally reached the engineering deck, staggered as the gravity shifted unpredictably around them. The reactor connection, Jesse realized, his face pale. It must have destabilized the gravity systems. Talon steadied herself against a console. "Can you fix it?" Jesse's mind raced through possibilities. "Maybe, but we'll need to manually adjust the gravity plating throughout the station. It's the only way to restore balance." They shared a look of tenacity, both understanding the monumental task ahead. Without a word, they set to work, Jesse's expertise with human technology melding seamlessly with Talon's knowledge of Orion systems. As they formulated their plan, Captain Steele and his team boarded Haven, their experience in variable G environments proving crucial. They moved through the chaotic station with practiced ease, assisting trapped crew members and securing critical systems. Throughout Haven, the summit delegates organized mixed teams of humans and Orions for rescue operations. Ambassador Chen and High Counselor Kavath led by example, working side by side to coordinate efforts and provide aid where needed. In the heart of Haven, Xanthor made a terrifying discovery. The power core was building to a critical overload, a delayed reaction to the earlier energy transfer. The Zarthak Elder realized that severing his connection to Haven's systems could prevent the catastrophe, but at the cost of his own life. Without hesitation, Xanthor prepared for his final act. As Jesse and Talon raced to stabilize the gravity systems, as Captain Steele led high-risk rescue operations, and as the combined fleets secured their victory in space, the fate of Haven hung in the balance, dependent on the ultimate sacrifice of a being from beyond the stars. Stars. The tension in the air was palpable as Jesse and Talon raced through Haven's chaotic corridors, their bodies adjusting instinctively to the unpredictable gravity shifts. They moved with a synchronicity born from countless hours working side by side, their movements fluid despite the station's instability. "We're almost there," Jesse called out, his voice strained as they approached the gravity control room. The door slid open with a hiss, revealing a dizzying array of consoles and holographic displays. Talon immediately took charge, her Orion military training kicking in. "I'll start on the primary systems. You handle the auxiliary controls." Jesse nodded, his fingers flying over the keyboards as he initiated the stabilization sequence. The room lurched violently, sending tools and data pads clattering to the floor. Warning klaxons blared, their urgent wails adding to the cacophony of creaking metal and sparking circuits. As they worked feverishly to restore balance to Haven's gravity systems, Jesse found himself in a zero-G pocket. His feet left the ground, and he flailed, desperately reaching for a handhold. "Talon!" he shouted, panic edging into his voice. Without hesitation, Talon launched herself across the room. Her powerful Orion muscles propelled her through the fluctuating gravity field. She grabbed Jesse's outstretched hand, her grip firm and reassuring. Using her strength, she anchored them both to a nearby console. Their eyes met, and in that moment, something unspoken passed between them. The trust, the reliance, the depth of their connection, it all crystallized in a single look. Jesse squeezed Talon's hand, a silent thank you that meant so much more. With renewed focus, they returned to their tasks. Jesse's engineering expertise melded seamlessly with Talon's knowledge of Orion systems. Lines of code flew across screens, power redistributed throughout the station, and slowly but surely, the gravity began to stabilize. Meanwhile, in another section of Haven, Captain Steele led his team through a maze of twisted corridors. The exosuits they wore strained against the crushing force of a high G zone. Ahead, they could hear the muffled cries of trapped Orion delegates. "Listen up," Steele barked to his team. "We're going to have to manually override the local gravity controls. Hernandez, Torres, you're with me. The rest of you, prepare for immediate evac once we get those doors open." Steele pushed forward, each step a monumental effort against the intense gravitational pull. Sweat beaded on his forehead as he reached the control panel. His fingers, made clumsy by the extreme conditions, fumbled with the wires. Come on, he muttered, acutely aware of the seconds ticking by. Finally, with a spark and a whine, the panel came to life. Steel input the override code, and the gravity in the section normalized with a lurch. The door slid open, revealing a group of wide-eyed Orion delegates. Their mandibles clicked rapidly in relief and gratitude as Steele's team helped them to safety. Among them, an Orion military observer regarded Steele with newfound respect. "Your actions honor us all, Captain," the observer said, clasping Steele's shoulder in a gesture of camaraderie. In Haven's central core, Xanthor's ethereal form pulsed with an otherworldly light. The other Zarthaks surrounded him, their bodies forming an intricate network of glowing energy. Through their telepathic link, they shared in their elders' final moments. Xanthor's voice echoed in their minds. "My friends, my family, our time together draws to a close, but our legacy will live on in the peace we helped forge today." With a surge of will, Xanthor severed his connection to Haven's systems. The backlash was immediate and catastrophic. Energy cascaded through the station's circuitry, threatening to overload every system. But the Zarthak were ready. Their combined mental strength formed a psychic barrier, redirecting the energy surge. They guided it, channeled it, their very essence straining against the onslaught. With a final, monumental effort, they shunted the excess power into Haven's shielding systems. The result was spectacular. A brilliant aurora of energy enveloped the station, rippling out in waves of iridescent light. Both human and Orion fleets ceased fire, captivated by the awesome display. As the immediate danger passed, Jesse and Talon made their way to the summit chamber. They arrived to find a scene that, days ago, would have seemed impossible. Human and Orion delegates worked side by side, coordinating rescue efforts and repair teams with seamless efficiency. Ambassador Chen and High Counselor Kavath stood at the center of the activity, issuing joint orders to mixed teams of humans and Orions. The sight brought a lump to Jesse's throat. He turned to Talon, seeing his own emotion mirrored in her eyes. "We did it," he whispered, his voice thick with feeling. Talon's mandibles clicked softly in agreement. "No, Jesse, we all did it. Together." As the situation on Haven stabilized, the summit reconvened. The atmosphere in the chamber was charged with a new energy, a sense of shared purpose that transcended species boundaries. Ambassador Chen took the floor, her voice ringing out clear and strong. "Fellow delegates, we stand at a crossroads in our shared history. The trials we have faced together have shown us the true strength of cooperation. It is time to set aside our differences and forge a new path, together." High Counselor Kavath stepped forward to join her. "We propose a comprehensive peace accord, one that will usher in an era of cultural exchange, scientific collaboration, and mutual defense." The chamber erupted in enthusiastic debate. Ideas flowed freely, with humans and Orions building on each other's suggestions. As the framework of the accord took shape, Jesse felt a tug on his arm. He turned to see Captain Steele, his face grim. "We've got the extremist leaders in custody," Steele said quietly, "both human and Orion. The delegates are calling for their execution." Jesse's mind raced. He looked around the chamber, seeing the hope and unity that had blossomed from their shared ordeal. An idea began to form. "Wait," he called out, stepping into the center of the chamber. All eyes turned to him as he outlined his proposal. "Instead of execution, what if we create a rehabilitation program? One where these extremists work together on joint human-Orion projects. We could turn their skills towards peace rather than conflict." The chamber fell silent as the delegates considered his words. Then slowly, a murmur of agreement began to build. Ambassador Chen nodded approvingly, while Kavath's mandibles clicked in thoughtful consideration. "A bold proposal," Kavath said, "but one that embodies the spirit of cooperation we seek to foster." The vote was unanimous. As applause filled the chamber, Jesse felt a hand slip into his. He turned to see Talon, her eyes shining with pride and something more. Without thinking, he pulled her close. Their lips met in a passionate kiss, a symbolic union of their species that drew cheers from the assembled delegates. As they parted, breathless and slightly embarrassed, Jesse saw the future stretching out before them, a future bright with the promise of unity and understanding between their peoples. The newly forged peace was just the beginning, There would be challenges ahead, cultural differences to navigate, and centuries of mistrust to overcome. But as Jesse looked around the chamber, seeing humans and Orions working together with newfound respect and camaraderie, he knew that they were ready to face whatever the universe might throw at them. Together.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.